presentation. Let me see. Come on, play ball.
It's saying all the right things. Right, I better switch myself off.
Oh, thank you. Here we go. So, seasonal affective disorder, or SAD as it's known, or winter blues, has possibly become more common over the last 20, 30 years. And what it is a depression that usually occurs seasonally with the winter coming on, but for some people, surprisingly, they can get it in the summer. Now, the symptoms are usually more noticeable and much stronger in the winter. And I've got a little list of symptoms here. So people who are suffering with a mixture of a constant low mood, lack of motivation, or any joy in normal life, can be quite irritable. Feelings that are related to other depressions like despair, guilt, worthlessness. Also a huge lethargy, often a sleepiness during the day, sleeping a lot longer than normal and finding it very hard to get up in the morning. And this is really classic, and I'll mention this again in relation to the nutrition, because there are often huge carb cravings, which can, of course, contribute to gaining weight. Now, what we know, of course, is that Inuits or Eskimos, those that are on a traditional diet, live in a place where they have 24 hours of darkness. But in traditional Inuits, there is no depression and no suicidal tendencies. So what's going on there? So if we have a look at fats and oils, there are fascinating differences in the ratio of their changes in status from highly polyunsaturated to saturated fats. And so if we think about seeds of plants that are grown up in the north pole area, and of course we are in a colder place than a lot of the tropics, obviously. So some of the seeds that we can grow in our country, like linseeds, for example, contain a lot more oil, and they tend to be our highly unsaturated fatty acids like omega-3 and omega-6. And interestingly, any wild animals that live in these areas will carry the most highly unsaturated, similarly as the seeds, omega-3 fatty acids in their tissues. And it's very interesting to know that grass-fed meat, like grass-fed cows, I mean obviously sheep, because that's what they live on anyway, but if we have grass-fed rather than grain-fed cattle, their meat will actually be much higher in omega-3, where grain-fed cattle will carry hardly any. And so things like particularly wild animals that someone might catch, like rabbit, game animals like pheasant and so on, will have a decent amount of omega-3 in their tissues when they live in a country like ours. Now, in the sun-drenched Mediterranean, you get the oils like olive and almond, which are highest in monounsaturated fatty acids. So such as, most of the ones you would think of as well are things like sesame, like sunflower. Hemp, interestingly, which we can also grow in the UK, has some omega-6 and some omega-3. But then if we move right to the heat in the world, in the tropics, then we find saturated fatty acids, which have no omega-3 in them, such as our coconut and our palm oils. And the interesting thing about those two oils is that they're very stable at high temperatures. So they suit the environment in which they grow. And this is why generally when you heat them, they retain their fat status much better. So if we think about a traditional Inuit diet, as we said, they don't have any depression or suicidal tendencies, even though they are living with 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, total darkness in the winter. They have, though, a diet that is high in oily fish, and the marine animals they eat, like the seal and so on, provide large quantities of EPA and DHA, which are both omega-3 fats. Now, where we have Europeans visiting the Arctic and Inuits on a modern Western diet, which are generally higher in saturated fats, then both those parties suffer from the winter blues with neurotic and psychotic and suicidal tendencies. And one of the main reasons for that is that the plant's seeds and the animal fats and the fish oils that are holding that stored sunlight energy are not available in the diet that they're eating. And so the brain cells and the synapses don't have the ingredients that we need, particularly in the nervous system, and our ability to dock neurotransmitters into the cell membranes, and depression is the result. So if you think about sunlight, really, if we don't have sunlight, then we need a higher ratio of these highly unsaturated fatty acids, because they are creating that photon light, or giving us that photon light that we would normally get from the sun. So they are high in photons and electrons, and they know that these oils can literally capture the light energy. And that has really beneficial effects in the eyes, the skin, the glands, and the brain particularly. Now, both are necessary really, but one can compensate for another. And this is how traditional Inuits manage right through their winter. And when you think about really a traditional British diet, before, say, the last 150, 170 years, when we really started to get all the industrialization coming in, and quite a cheap modern diet started to come in around the mid to late 1800s, then certainly we would have had a lot more oily fish coming in the diet. The animals would have been grass-fed, definitely. Chickens would have scratched around, and their egg yolks would have held the omega-3 because of eating insects and so on, scratching around in the grass, and various benefits like that. Now, an Inuit on a diet of fruit and vegetables in an Arctic winter would starve. They would be starved of the ingredients that their brain and the other cell membranes in their body desperately need to get them through that harsh winter. And also, if you think about it, they would also have a sort of insulatory layer of fat. Now, to the same degree, if someone in the tropics, like in Samoa, for example, had a marine oils diet, but they were living under a hot sun, and just think about if they were eating something heavy like seal meat as well, they simply would not be able to manage that level of fat content in the diet in the same way. So this would be why when they do have their oily fish that they'll gather obviously from the sea, it'll be combined with a good range of local vegetables and using other oils to cook it perhaps as well that are more local. And then what I'd like you to think about, if you look at this picture, is about phospholipids, because those little lipid tails in this cell membrane, and what you've got is you've got a layer of phosphorus on the inside of the cell and on the outside of the cell, and it's joined to the phosphorus head has a lipid tail, and the two lipid tails join together in the middle. So it's a double layer, a bilayer of phospholipids. And some of those lipids will need to be essential fatty acids. Now, phosphatidylserine particularly is a phospholipid that contains essential fatty acids. And there have been over 30 studies, if not more now. I think it was 37 last time I sort of checked in a book. But of course, there will have been more since that was published. And they show that phosphatidylserine improves mood in elderly people who have winter blues. But additionally, it also improved their memory and their cognition, their ability to process information and juggle it around. And phosphatidylserine really, a phospholipid, all it is a structural unit that's used in all the cells of your body, but it's particularly highly concentrated in brain cells. And I don't know if you can see, let's have a quick look to see if there's any receptors shown in here. No, I've gone and picked a diagram that hasn't got any receptor sites in it. But the lovely thing about essential fatty acids is that because they have kinky tails, where a saturated fat is two straight fats, highly unsaturated fats have a little kinky tail, which means that they form a very different shape in the cell membrane that allows neurotransmitters like your acetylcholine, which helps your memory, like your dopamine, that is there for get up and go and motivation, and your serotonin, that's there for serenity and well-being, and anandamine, which is there for feeling good. All of those neurotransmitters can dock into the cell membrane and make you feel good, make you feel motivated, help you remember things that you need to remember. So thinking about food sources, now this list here is particularly connected to phosphatidylserine. And so things like mackerel and herring, grass-fed meats, organic chicken liver. I wouldn't recommend any other, if you have liver, I would not recommend any other form than organic, particularly because the liver really is the dirtiest part of an animal, of a human, of a fish, because it processes and filters and cleans the blood. by the minute. And so, you know, I would recommend that if you're going to get a chicken livers to make a, you know, a pate or something like that, that you use an organic source. Things like white beans and soybeans can be a source of phosphatidylserine, and also the lecithin that is made from soybeans. Not mad about the processing of soybean lecithin and tend to use sunflower lecithin. Sunflower seeds, you can just chomp away on sunflower seeds. You can sprout sunflower seeds. They are a lovely source of phosphatidylserine. And we've noticed since we've started feeding the birds more, how much more sunflower seeds, or how many more sunflower seeds they're consuming during this darker weather, darker season, sorry. Absolutely incredible speed they're getting through them. So it's interesting to see nature instinctively chomping away on what is going to make them feel good. And then, of course, there's things like organic free-range egg yolks. So, as we was saying earlier, when things are scratching around in the grass and eating little insects and all this kind of thing, there's going to be much richer in omega-3 and phospholipid type sources. Oh, sorry, I'm going to go back a moment, because I just wanted to mention about omega-3 sources, because we've got a few there. Grass-fed meats are a source. I would highly recommend that rather than any other meat if you're going to have it. Near us, we do have an organic farm called Swillington, and their animals are all grass-fed. Oily fish, salmon, mackerel, herring, trout, tuna, all of those are a lovely source of omega-3 fats. We've mentioned egg yolks. Green leafy veg is lovely. There's a bit in avocado. Things like walnuts, pumpkin seeds, lovely sources of omega-3. Oops, I'm still going backwards, sorry. And then just a quick mention of next year's energy journey, starting from January's new moon next year. Always a lovely time to have a new beginning. So I'm offering one-to-one support to change diet and lifestyle. And there'll be group sessions, a little bit like this, and obviously support and encouragement from the group. If you want to make 2021 your Get Healthy New Year. So then I also love to wish you a happy 2021 and a really lovely festive break.
Thank you.
Stop this share here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, lovely.